I'm Roy Lee Lindsay with the North Carolina Pork Council, and I want everyone to remember, bacon makes everything better.
Welcome back into the fifth quarter here on the North Carolina Sports Network. He is the coach, Jim Collins. I am Mike Waddell, and coming up in this Week 16 edition of the program, we're going to talk with veteran head coach and assistant coach Charlie Strong. That's coming up later in the show. Coach knows him really well. We're going to talk about his time working with all sorts of legends and look into the hiring of Bill Belichick at the University of North Carolina. Get Charlie Strong's perspective on that. But first off, Jim, we're going to talk about the Tar Heels making news this week with the hire of the 8-time Super Bowl champion professional coach into his first job in the collegiate ranks. And as a former North Carolina assistant, I know you definitely have some opinions, so let's go to that. What are your thoughts on the hire of Bill Belichick at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill?
Well, obviously, Mike, I think it's a really good hire. I think that Bill Belichick is obviously a good football coach that has won 6 Super Bowls as a head coach and 2 Super Bowls as an assistant coach. I think the thing that gives me at this point in time is the number of people saying that coach is the greatest coach of all time. Well, I don't know how you decide who's the greatest coach of all time. I guess maybe 6 Super Bowls makes you that, or whatever. I think he's within the group, but I have to think back to Nick Saban. I have to think back to Don Shula. There's a guy in Kansas City right now that they're 13-1, and they're about to go to their third consecutive Super Bowl by the name of Andy Reid. There's lots and lots of great coaches out there. And I don't want to put this on Coach Belichick by any stretch of the imagination. But when people talk about the greatest of all time, greatest player, greatest coach, all those things, how do you know? Have you seen all of them? Or are you just basing it on stats? So, people ask me, who is the best player that you ever coached? I said, well, you know what? I coached this one, and this one. It was a different team with this one. Right. I don't know how you rank those things. I think you say, this guy, and Bill Belichick does have an opportunity to be a great addition to the University of North Carolina program, obviously.
You and I are both born and bred North Carolinians. We've watched the Tar Heel football program our whole lives. I can tell you I've been going to games since 1969. I never thought I'd see the day that you could make an argument now that football was being prioritized over basketball at the University of North Carolina. Now, Dean Smith is gone from the landscape. So too is Roy Williams. And now Bill Belichick joins that GOAT line of coaches that had been in Chapel Hill. Anson Dorrance, Karen Shelton, you name them. Mac Brown is the all-time winningest coach at the University of North Carolina. I worked with Coach Brown from 1991 through 1994. I've had a relationship with him, sometimes a little bit more strong than others. You most recently worked for him as an analyst on one of his 2.0 staffs in Chapel Hill. I got to tell you, one of the things, and we'll talk about Belichick, we're going to blow this up, and sure, it's a momentous moment in the history of UNC football. But I got to tell you, one thing that has really kind of hit me hard, and you and I talked throughout the week, has been how much even people in authority at North Carolina, again, we're talking about our favorite clown car, the University of North Carolina Board of Trustees, how some of these folks have referred to the University of North Carolina football program as a JV level program. And if we needed to invest, man, this was the time. And when you look at the money now that has been put into this program, reportedly, UNC committed more than $16 million for assistant coaches, strength and conditioning staff, and support staff, including Michael Lombardi, the longtime NFL insider, as the general manager, and $13 million in revenue sharing to the football program. Saying it's a JV program, I got to tell you, is pretty disrespectful to Mack Brown, who not once but twice came to North Carolina and twice rescued this program from mediocrity at the time when he came in. First, from the waning years of Dick Crum, and second, after the waning years of Larry Fedora after an ACC championship game appearance by Fedora's Tar Heels. That just doesn't sit well with me. And the ending to Mack Brown, we covered it. We talked about it. It was not good. Probably wasn't the best of times for either side of that exchange. But to throw dirt on the guy after he's walked out the door, man, that dog don't hunt.
Mike, we've had this discussion the entire season, from August when we did the first show all the way up to show 16 where we are now. And we've said all along, and I guess somebody was listening, but we made the statement that it's going to take more of a commitment, more money, and more opportunity to win at the University of North Carolina. Why you wait until I don't know. I'm almost at a loss for words that you wait to this point where and it's always better for the next guy. And I don't mean to ramble at this point in time, but at the same time, if you had the money, why didn't you spend it before? Why were you satisfied with being mediocre before? Why now did you decide to spend the money? I know the answer to that is because if you don't spend the money, your butt's going to get left behind when the split comes. That's exactly why they decided to make this move.
It would have been nice after Sam Howell, an NFL quarterback, breathed life into the Tar Heels, and Mack's second coming in Chapel Hill, that when Drake May took over in 2022 and in 2023, that perhaps they would have tried to go out and maybe get him an offensive line or maybe a receiver besides the much maligned Tez Walker that it took everybody from the soon-to-be governor of North Carolina, Josh Stein, getting involved as the state's attorney general, all the way up to really everybody piping off against the NCAA to get Tez eligible. Why didn't you just go out and use some of that money to get somebody then? Because Mack Brown was asking for that type of stuff. And to not give that to him and then on the backside refer to him as running a JV program and that kind of stuff, it just doesn't sit well. Now, it's great that it's happening now. And, everybody else is all drinking the Kool-Aid right now, and they're all excited about the future. And, well, they should be. But, again, and we're probably just crying over spilt milk. But, again, it just makes me feel a little bit less than 100% enthusiastic when you look at how this comes, because you and I were talking off air, and I really believe this. I spent 28 years on campuses. You've been on campuses for over 40. And the one thing that is the biggest joke in the history of time is when college sports, college athletics departments, coaches, athletics directors, presidents, all these people talk about the family. The only family that operates like this is a mob family, one where they're going to put a slug in the back of your head if you do something wrong, if you blow something up. I mean, this is not a family. This is cold, hard business. Call it that, because that's what they're doing right now. When you put this much money into it, it is unmistakably a business. And maybe if North Carolina starts to treat all of their sports like a business, we'll see more over-the-top success. You're not seeing it in basketball anymore. I mean, they got a big win over LaSalle, whoop-de-doo. On Tuesday night, they'll play Florida, and they're probably going to go down hard. They still have another game against UCLA coming up. You talk about a rant, I'm on one now. But, North Carolina football, just because you hired a Super Bowl winning head coach doesn't mean that you're going to be a ACC championship team, because there are a lot of good programs in the ACC right now. One is already led by a former NFL head coach and a Belichick disciple, and Billy O'Brien at Boston College that, has a pretty good team, beat North Carolina this past year, and they put together quite a transfer portal group up there in Chestnut Hill as well. Dabo Swinney, the ACC Coach of the Year, Rhett Lashley, Fran Brown at Syracuse. We could go on and on. Dave Clawson eventually is going to have his once every 4 to 5 year run at Wake Forest when they build up some firepower in Winston-Salem. Manny Diaz is up to double-digit wins in Durham in his first year. Is that sustainable? Who knows? And we've not even talked about Dave Doran or Brent Key yet. So there are a lot, and Mario Cristobal at Miami. This is not just everybody's going to lay down and say, oh, you're Bill Belichick. Way to go. Come on in and beat our ass. I mean, I go back to the family, though. After my rant, I go back to the family thing. It's just bullshit. And they need to quit talking about that. This is a business. If you win, you win. If you don't, you're out.
No doubt. And in this business, you have associates. Rarely do you have a longtime friend, but you do have a lot of associates in this business that all of a sudden, if you're out of a job, they lose your number. But when they're out of a job, they manage to find your number again. So lots and lots of associates out there. But let me say this. I live in the coastal part of the state, and I happen to know at a club that I'm a member of that Coach Brown was here playing golf with boosters, possible boosters, to raise money for NIL, et cetera, for the University of North Carolina. Do you think Bill Belichick's going to do that? I would be shocked if he does. And it's shocking that Coach Brown had to do those things. So what I'm saying is, if you're going to all of a sudden make a change, at least give me the full chamber in the gun, so that if I'm going to go out and I'm going to have a shot to win here, give me everything that you're going to give the next guy. And then if I can't do it, hire the next guy.
If you are anywhere near Wilmington, North Carolina, and looking for a little live music, a cold beer, a tangy slushie, a fun crowd, or just a taste of the good life at the beach, Jimmy's Bar in Wrightsville Beach is the place for you. Located on North Lumina Avenue, just 1 block from the sand and waves of the Atlantic Ocean, Jimmy's features a full bar with nightly beer and drink specials, and it hosts musical performers almost every day of the year. One more fun fact, Jimmy's annual Children's Bike Drive, which started in 2017, now distributes more than 1,000 bicycles and helmets per year to young people in the Wilmington area and beyond. Jimmy's Bar, your home away from home on Lumina Avenue in Wrightsville Beach.
This segment brought to you by our great friends at Atlantic Tire and Service, where DG and his family take all of their vehicles for routine maintenance, service needs, and a world-class selection of new tires. Atlantic Tire and Service, your one-stop tire and auto repair provider with highly trained technicians and a sales and support staff that are second to none. They've grown to 6 Triangle area locations, 2 in Raleigh, 2 in Cary, 1 in Durham, and 1 in Wake Forest. You can learn more online at AtlanticTireOnline.com.
Coming up later in the show, we're going to talk with one of your good friends, Charlie Strong, who's been a head coach at a lot of great programs. His assistant coaching background is amazing when you look at all the coaches that he's worked through. You've been an assistant, and a great assistant, a national championship winning assistant. You've been that in both the National Football League and at the highest levels of college football. Right now, Bill Belichick is having to put together a college staff. How does he weigh the balance between going for guys with NFL experience against people who have experience in the collegiate game?
Well, I think there's a fine line between how he's going to manage that, and I'm following that very closely to see exactly where he's going. The only hires that he's made at this point in time, as we do this show, is Michael Lombardi as the general manager, who is a longtime NFL guy that will manage as the GM, will manage the roster and do it very well. I mean, he's a pro. He knows what he's doing. And then he's going to retain Freddie Kitchens at this point in time, who is also an NFL guy. But there will be an interesting mix, I anticipate. I don't know this. I'm anticipating that it will be a mix between veteran recruiters on the college level and pro football coaches. I would think that I would think you're going to hear the Josh McDaniels in the world. I've already heard Scott Turner's name as the offensive coordinator from the Oakland Raiders.
Former Redskins head coach.
Yeah, from the Las Vegas Raiders, I should say. Norv Turner's son, I've heard him as a possible offensive coordinator. Then you move into that. I've also heard Vince Morrow's name, who is the tight end coach, making about $1.3 million at the University of Kentucky, is a renowned recruiter. I guess that he's a renowned recruiter. I don't mean to be on you, Vince, but Kentucky hadn't won a hell of a lot of games here lately, I don't think. So how many great recruits do you have? But maybe he'll be better here. Money talks, BS walks, and they're going to have a lot of money to recruit with.
It's an amazing thing to look at some of the names that are coming off. You brought up Scott Turner. I mean, that's a guy that has grown up in the NFL. As soon as January 1st rolls around and the Huskies are done with their bowl game, you anticipate that it's going to be the Washington Huskies defensive coordinator, Steve Belichick, that will be coming to join his father. His buyout goes from $1 million to $0 as of January 2nd. So that's probably the reason why he's not been announced as of yet. But you bring up something right there. When we talk about assistant coaches, it's not just assistant coaches. And when a head coach gets fired, how many people on a staff from like 1 to 70, let's say, how many people get fired?
The entire building. Who knows? I don't know how many people were employed at the University of North Carolina. I can probably anticipate.
There's not a lot of carryover, is my point.
No.
Well, just keep this person or just keep that person. They're really cool. They've been around it. They're really good guys. It's nothing. I mean, it's over. It's Thanksgiving time. No pardon for that turkey. They're done.
You're absolutely correct, Mike.
It's really a hard thing to watch. I've handed out those notices. One time I handed out a notice to one guy at one school and then fired him again at a second school. Now I was the emissary right there. Okay, I was the underboss, so to speak. I was the what do you call it? Robert Duvall character out of The Godfather to the AD, and I had to give this guy his papers at one place and then give him his papers at a second place. And both times he could not have been a better guy. I'm talking about Jim Tracy, the longtime veteran college football assistant coach. I had to let him go both at Akron and at Cincinnati, but it's a tough business.
It is, Mike, without a doubt. But when you sign the contract and you take a job in this business, you know what you're signing up for. You know that unless you have success and you're competing for championships, whether it be conference or national or whatever, unless you're competing for championships, that they're going to try to find the next guy, and I'm okay with that. That's I signed lots of contracts based on that, and fortunately I was in a lot of situations due to working for Steve Spurrier that we won a lot of championships, a lot of bowl games, and a national championship, and all those things. But I've also been fired because we weren't good enough. And you who do you get pissed off at? You get pissed off at yourself, but I've said this all along. I've said it all fall. Players make plays. We are all better coaches with players. Coach Belichick and his staff will have the opportunity to build a roster with very, very good players, because the way of the world right now is so different than when Coach Brown came back for Mac Brown 2 at the University of North Carolina. Coach Brown is an excellent recruiter. I mean, going in homes, meeting moms, meeting dads, being around players, and Sally, they love these players, and they do an excellent job at doing that. But guess what? That's not nearly as important as it used to be. Now, let me say this now. Relationships with high school players is still going to be important, not nearly as important with the transfer portal. What becomes important this day and time is how much money are you paying me? Give me the bottom line. Tell me what you think I'm worth and tell me where I fit. I don't know how many of you listen to Bryce Baker in the introduction at the Smith Center. Well, everything that he said, and he seems like a great, great young man, but it's what they can do for me, not as much of what they can do, they meaning the staff and Coach Belichick, what they can do for the University of North Carolina football. This is how they can grow me. So it's become a me society at this point in time.
And you've already seen that too from Kendry Harrison, the fine junior all-world tight end from Reidsville, who announced his commitment on November 30th to the University of Oregon, a full year early. So it's not even binding. But they were asking him earlier in the week if he were going to reconsider his commitment in light of the Belichick hiring at North Carolina. And Harrison said, no, I am full-blown an Oregon Duck. Now, they are number one in the nation right now, and they did just back up the Brinks truck to his family's house. So I doubt he would look back on that commitment, but it's going to take a very special type of kid to have the maturity to want to play for this North Carolina system. When you listen to Michael Lombardi talk, he's talking about totally rebuilding this North Carolina roster. He said from the inside out, from the offensive and defensive lines, and they needed a quarterback. Do you anticipate that if North Carolina has a need right now, that they indeed will focus on their offensive and defensive fronts and at that quarterback position?
Well, Mike, last I checked, there are 7 defensive linemen that are walking through the door for the last time at the University of North Carolina. Plus, you add into that Travis Shaw is in the transfer portal. Whether he stays in the transfer portal or not, I have no idea. We have on this show the entire season talked about the inadequacies of the offensive line at the University of North Carolina. So obviously, you still win games this day and time, and Coach Belichick is so aware of this, and he made this statement in his press conference. Winning games is still all about blocking and tackling and taking care of the ball and having fewer penalties. That, along with really good players, equals lots of wins.
Yeah, Travis Shaw wasn't worth a hoot for the time that he played at Carolina. A massive underperformer. I mean, this guy was a 4-star, 5-star guy coming out of high school, supposed to be all a bag of chips, and he didn't do anything. I mean, and then you listen to the Carolina people talk, and I've been around a lot of them this weekend back in the RDU area. They're saying, man, I really hope Travis Shaw comes back, and says, why the hell would you want somebody to come back? The other one, when you talk about the quarterbacks right now, Max Johnson's coming back, but he's not played in a year. Didn't look like he was a world beater, certainly not Tom Brady in the opener against Minnesota. Criswell can come back. I don't know how much of a ceiling is there with him. Connor Harrell's already hit the portal, and now supposedly they've offered a scholarship to the quarterback from UNC Charlotte. Now, sure, he was a backup this past year and played pretty well against Carolina and Chapel Hill. But if that's what you're taking into the TCU game coming up at the opening of the 2025 season, that's not really inspiring. I've got to think that the best coach of all time and his former Super Bowl winning general manager are going to come up with a little bit more out of the QB1 position than that trio.
Well, I thought the quarterback at UNC Charlotte was a good player. Whether he's the answer or not, I don't know. I haven't seen enough of him. But I will say this about Travis Shaw. From an athletic, a big man that can do things that you would not think a 6'3", 6'4", 350-pound guy could do. He can do all those things. I mean, he has unbelievable ability when it comes to it. Now, I think Ted Monachino, who has been the D-line coach and it was a long-time NFL coordinator, you would think Ted would be able to have motivated him to get to that point. So my question is that within the makeup of this player? Is that within Travis's heart to want to be a great player, or is he just a happy-go-lucky guy that's okay with being average? I don't know. We'll find out. We're gonna find out.
I talked to an ACC defensive coordinator who gave me his opinion of Travis Shaw earlier this afternoon. He said he has a Tarzan body and a Jane heart. So maybe that's a little bit harsh, but I think that you just hit on it. If you have all this ability and nobody's been able to hit you, and I believe it was Tim Cross before his current coach that was with him, who is a pretty good coach. He didn't forget anything about football along the line. I mean, you got to think that Carolina is going to be upgrading exactly where they say. Why would you start with the offensive and defensive front, though, Jimmy?
Well, I've never been part of a winning program, Mike, that was not good. And I'm going to use an old term, that was not good in the trenches. And to be able, this day and time, not unlike previous times in this game, you have to be able to run the football to be successful and on offense. You have to be able to run the ball because that sets everything up. If you can't run the ball with consistency, and I can, as a defensive coach, if I can defend you with 7 defenders in the box and stop the run, then that means I can commit more people to do what? Or 6 defenders, I should say. I can commit more defenders to defend the pass. But if you can run the football and I have to bring that 7th and that 8th guy into the box to defend the run, then it gets easier to throw the ball. So the ability to run the football and the ability to stop the run is still critical in today's game, without a doubt. Anybody that watched this weekend's Army-Navy game, was that not a classic game plan by Navy of being able to execute the running game and being physical? And I heard Coach Belichick say this, and I heard Mike Lombardi say this. It's all about physicality. You've got to be physical. You've got to block people and you've got to tackle people.
Yeah, I was watching that Army-Navy game with Army heart because I was the voice of the Black Knights back at the early part of the 2000s. And I will tell you, you never get over losing an Army-Navy game. I do wonder, though, if Army lost a little bit of their fire by having to play Tulane the previous Friday night at Michie Stadium and then winning that game, going away from the Green Wave and celebrating that American Athletic Conference championship. I mean, it's still the Commander-in-Chief trophy. It's still the Army-Navy game, but you only get so many celebrations in that heart. Is it hard to keep your motivation high over that kind of a continued run?
Sure it is, especially when you've had the opportunity to win your conference championship. And I've used this before in our conversations, and we used to have this issue at the University of Florida. We would play Florida State in the 11th or 12th game of the year, but 11th game, and then we went to 12. Coach Spurrier made the comment one time that we would rather win the SEC than beat Florida State. Everybody thought, well, we're not trying to beat Florida State. Well, guess what? We were still trying to win. But the SEC meant more because it meant more money for all of us, and it meant a ring on your finger. Obviously, that was the important one to win. It is still difficult when you get this far into the season to maintain that level of competitiveness. And plus, here's the other thing. What was the winning streak that Army had at this point in time? Was it 4 in a row?
They were 11-1 on the season after losing to Notre Dame late in November.
Yeah, but they had won 4 Army-Navy games in a row. So they had been on an Army-Navy streak. And when you've lost to somebody in consecutive years, especially 4 consecutive years, your motivation gets quite high because you've had your ass embarrassed. You're tired of getting your ass embarrassed and living with it for a full year, because in rivalry games, you live with it for a full year. I've lived with the Duke-Carolina Duke game. I've lived with seeing that bell in our locker room. I've lived with seeing that bell go to the other end of the stadium. That's hard to take, man. It is absolutely difficult to take. Florida State, Georgia. I've been in all those rivalries. They're difficult to take when you don't win them.
Army's 11-2. They'll go on to play in the Independence Bowl in lovely tropical Shreveport, Louisiana. They were supposed to play the Marshall Thundering Herd. Marshall winning the Sun Belt Conference, but their head coach, Charles Huff, not being retained. Lots of back and forth there. We won't get into that, but he's off to Southern Miss along with 25 Thundering Herd players in the transfer portal. So now the transfer portal hits the all-time crazy jumping of the shark with almost an entire team leaving to go somewhere else because their coach has been he's departed. Just go ahead and say that.
Leave it at that.
Tony Gibson, the defensive coordinator for NC State, now the head coach of the Thundering Herd. He's thrilled to be there. I think Charles Huff is thrilled to be in Hattiesburg, the first person ever to put those words together in a sentence. So let's talk about the transfer portal. Is it come to the time now, Jim, that we need to move the transfer portal a little bit deeper, maybe into January, to where people and cooler heads can prevail?
You know, Mike, the calendar becomes a real issue with the transfer portal and the early signing day. I am not a believer in the early signing date being the Wednesday before the conference championship games. That's a lot of pressure on people at that point in time. And I'm not talking about pressure on players, high school players. I'm talking about pressure on staffs to make those decisions at that point in time. We have a real issue with a calendar. And that issue is this, that if you delay the transfer portal until after Christmas, until after Christmas, then you're running up on the beginning of a new semester. So if you go January 1 after, and then you open up the date at that point in time, and players are making decisions. So I don't know that there is a good calendar to get someone involved in your program to be there for the spring semester. And it's critical for a transfer to be there for the spring semester. So, it's a difficult process to go through. Used to in the early part of recruiting, we recruited all the way up to Christmas Eve. And then we came home and we coached the bowl games, and we went back out immediately after a bowl game on January 1. Maybe we need to go back. Maybe the portal needs to open up on December the 28th and close on January the 7th. But I think it's very unfair where the portal is at this point in time.
Boy, we have hit a lot of topics here in our first segment. We talk about Carolina hiring Bill Belichick. We talked about the transfer portal. We talked about how you put together a team in the modern era of college football. And still to come, after this timeout, we're going to talk with one of the most well-traveled coaches in the history of American college football, the pride of Batesville, Arkansas, Charlie Strong, that comes up next right here on the Fifth Quarter. And we need to find Coach because he's not here.
He says he's on, but it's black on him.
Huh. I don't know. I'm looking at it. I'm going to reset. We'll stop this recording and start a new one with him, okay?
Yes.
Okay. Here, stop.
In sports, we talk a lot about impact players who make a positive difference. When it comes to our state's economy, the North Carolina pork industry is a true MVP. Each year, the pork industry plays an important role in supporting rural communities across our state. It contributes more than $10 billion a year to the North Carolina economy and supports more than 44,000 jobs. Learn more about their positive impact at ncpork.org. The North Carolina Pork Council, the foundational partner of the North Carolina Sports Network. The Original Salt Works has become a legendary breakfast, brunch, and lunch place in Wilmington for both locals and out-of-town visitors over the last 50-plus years. Our good friend Bob Hubbard owns the place, but he's also the one cooking your food and often roaming the dining room to greet you with a smile and to make sure your visit is a great one. Bob has been running the show at this unique roadside diner for more than 20 years now, and he and his friendly, hardworking staff aim to treat you like one of their own. Try Bob's homemade omelets or special recipe grits for breakfast or his legendary cheeseburgers for lunch. The Original Salt Works, your breakfast and lunch choice on Oleander Drive in Wilmington.
It's a special 1, 2, 3-way segment here on the fifth quarter. Mike Waddell, the coach Jim Collins, now joined by the one, the only Charlie Strong, the pioneer of Batesville, Arkansas, joining us right here. And Coach Strong, welcome to the North Carolina Sports Network. We appreciate you joining us this week.
Thank you, Mike, and to you and Jim. Thank you for having me on. Been looking forward to this. Jim and I've had numerous conversations on when I was going to come on air, so we get a chance to talk a little ball, talk a few topics tonight.
We do. I have to ask you first off, give us your best Jim Collins story. I mean, we've been kissing his butt for 2 years here. I want to finally hear some poop on the Elon graduate and national champion Florida Gator assistant coach.
You know, Jim and I, we worked together for numerous years, and we've maintained a great relationship over those years. And I don't know if I have any good stories. I just know this. Every Sunday after a game, him and I would come in together because we had a great film. We had great players, and we'd just sit in the room together and go through the tape and make our comments to one another, then just wait till we had a big meeting, see what was going to be said.
See what the little man would say.
Yes, exactly right. Just wait and then see what was going to be said by everybody and see if they saw it the way we saw it.
Now, Coach Strong, I'm looking at your resume right here, and you started as a GA with the Gators back in 1983. That was 41 years ago. You have seen quite the evolutionary track here of college football until your last assignment as an analyst with Nick Saban at the University of Alabama in 2023. What do you think about what's going on in college football here in today's world?
Well, you know, I say this to you, Mike, I don't mind paying players, but it's just that we got to have I don't know if there's a set number for that, but we got to find a way where you can take care of the players, but you do not lose. I want to say not so much the value, but doesn't lose what college football is all about. When you're talking about just teamwork and being a teammate, and we're winning is important. We're winning, winning games is important to the players, because you look at the transfer portal now, and you look at the NIL, and you look at just how far this thing have come. It was back then. It was a scholarship, and the young man was happy to get a scholarship. He was fighting to get a scholarship. Now, with that scholarship, they're asking for more than the scholarship now. And what is really you can't get away from the educational side of it, because you want to see guys getting a chance to get a degree, and so that they can better their life. But now you can't do that if you're going to 4 or 5 different schools. So really, what school do you represent?
It's got to be just unnerving that you're making these relationships with the kids, but sometimes it's not the kids who are calling the shots. In basketball, when I was dealing as a director of athletics with AAU coaches and different types of bagmen on the basketball scene, it seems like that is now more and more pronounced in college football.
Well, it used to be a time you never had to deal with an agent, because kids didn't have agents then, when we were coming along. But now you're right. It's where you don't even talk to the players or the recruits anymore. You're talking to their agents, and the thing about those agents, they have an agenda for themselves too. So they're gonna say, "Hey, it's all about me protecting the young man." Yes, and that can only go so far, because they're worried about themselves. And you said it when you talk about a relationship. That's what sports used to be built on. Even when you went recruiting, it was all about you building a relationship with the family, with the player, with the coaches. You had those relationships built so that then you could always go back and recruit these different schools. But now those relationships you don't have them anymore, because you don't really deal with the player. Like you said, you're dealing with an agent now, you're dealing with a parent now. So where is the relationship part of it, which is where it all started?
Basically, Charlie, the high school coach is eliminated from this process at this point in time. It used to be that we went to every school in your recruiting area within the state, and you recruited your recruiting area, and now it's completely out of the high school coach's hands at this point in time.
Well, it was amazing, Jim. And like you said it, we used to have to go deal with the high school coach. You don't even deal with him anymore. You can walk in that school right now, and that coach won't even know that the young man has a visit with you, or because he's looking at it like nobody told me, and you feel bad because really that's where their foundation is starting from the high school coach. But then they get an agent involved, so now the agent feel like he has more stroke than the high school coach, so he just where you don't even deal with it.
Coach Strong, you've dealt with the great programs over the course of your career in college football. Florida, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Louisville as the head coach, Texas as the head coach. What a lineage there, South Florida, and then Miami and Alabama. But going back to that last tenure, in fact, 2 different stints with Coach Saban at Alabama, everybody looks at that program as being the Mercedes-Benz, the Maybach, the Bentley of college football, but even they are dealing with some of these troubles, and sometimes people are just not satisfied. What will it take to satisfy a kid in 2025 moving forward? And in some way, form, or fashion, how can you mesh that all together with what Bill Belichick is now going to have to learn to deal with here in the bold north state of North Carolina as he takes over the Tar Heels program?
Well, it's going to be hard to really, come together and just say, hey, this is where we need to be, because everybody's always looking at an angle, and everybody's always looking for either they can better themselves or, find a way where they can help themselves. And like you said, I was at Bama with 2 different times with Coach Saban, and you still would, if it isn't, it's not so much playing time. Guys used to get upset and transfer now because of playing time. They'll transfer because of playing time, but they want more money. So now you got to deal with, okay, this young man, he comes in, he plays a little, and somebody done told him that so-and-so at this school is getting this much, because all these players talk. So all these players know, like, hey, what's happening to Alabama, what's happening to Georgia, what's happening to Florida, what these guys are all getting paid. So now if his friend telling him he's making more money than him, then he's trying to find a way, how can I make more money? And so I don't know if you can ever just it's got to be a way where we can say, hey, this is the pay scale for this position, or this is, or, but then it's going to come back to, okay, if this guy's productive as a freshman, say you had a 1,000-yard rusher as a freshman. Now, what is he worth? Or a quarterback goes out as a freshman and throws, 30 touchdowns. What is he worth? A guy goes and gets, 10 sacks. What is he worth? So it's so hard to place a value on it. But I think that we got to find a way to get it under control, or it's just going to continue. Some schools, what I get afraid of, like some of these schools are going to get left out because they can't pay them. Where you have the other, the P4s, they can pay. But then the other schools, what can they pay? So do they just become now, you just become a minor league for the bigger schools?
If you were a head coach at a big school in the state, let's say it's the University of Alabama, would it make any sense to form some type of an alliance with another school in the state, say a Jacksonville State, and say, hey, we'll play you home and home, every year, and we'll give you $1 million a year. You take and develop players, and then you send us players after you've already gotten them to a certain level. Is that what we're going to get to, where an Alabama or a Georgia might have a farm system of schools that are feeding players to them on a regular basis?
Well, right now, they don't even have to pay those schools because it's what you're getting. And right. Because you look at the players now, if you're at a like you said, just say if you were at Savannah State and you were the best player on their team, you won't be there next year because somebody is going to come and recruit you. So somebody's going to come and take you. And so So if I'm at one of, just say this, Mike, if I'm at one of those schools, I'm going to recruit a young man and I'm going to say to him, hey, listen, come and play for me. I know you may be here 1 year. I'm going to develop you, make you as good as you possibly can be, and then I will send you wherever you want to go. And that's the only way it's going to happen.
Let me say this: I have a good friend that's the head coach at a FCS school.
Mm-hmm.
He has a redshirt freshman that had a decent year with 6 sacks and 10 tackles for losses. I may be off a little bit on those numbers. Is a good player. He went in the transfer portal. He has 10, I repeat, 10 Power 4 offers, and with a $500,000 offer on the table.
But Jim, but you got to look at, that's what guys are doing, because if just say if you take a freshman right now, you take a freshman, and then you have a player like whom you just talked about who just went through. He had 10 sacks. He had so many tackles for a loss. You're gonna go get the guy with the top because he's already played. Yeah. So now he's unplayed. He done showed me that he can go play. And that player that you talking about from the FCS, just say if he played 3 or 4 Power 4s and he looked good playing them, then you're gonna say, hey, if he's done already played against these guys. Yep. So let me go and take him instead of worried about, because this kid is gonna come along. I don't have to be in a hurry for now to develop the player of my own. I'm gonna go in the portal and take him.
Charlie, you and I both have been in pro football, and with what's going on now, and Mike and I have talked about this on shows all the way through as we've done this all fall. What we're dealing with right now, the transfer portal is free agency, without a doubt. The high school recruiting is the draft. So there's somewhere in between those as you build your program as to how you're going to build it. We're in the state of North Carolina where Bill Belichick is the hottest name going at this point in time, and understandably, I agree. But how they're going to build the roster, whether it's through the transfer portal or whether it's through the draft, which is high school recruiting, or somewhere in between, we're going to find out at this point in time. But it's going to be a challenge. Charlie, you and I have talked about this many times. We're both pretty damn good football coaches, okay? But I'm a hell of a lot better coach with really good players.
Hey, let me say this. Hey, a lot of coaches are that. And that's the thing with a coach. He wants the best players. And the programs that win consistently have better players than everyone else. And and not to take anything away from a coach, but because you got to develop them and you got to get, the preparation's got to be there. You got to get them ready to go play. But when you have a good players, there's not much. It's all there, but you got your guy now. It's especially. I always think this, Jim. If I have a good quarterback, I have me a good receiver, I got a good running back, and then I have me a couple of guys on defense, then I think I'm gonna be pretty good.
Pass rusher, and a cover corner, and a safety that'll sickle into the box and make tackles. You got a chance, Charlie.
And you're right. You always got to build your team up front with your linemen, but those linemen are going to help protect these guys so that I can get those guys going.
Charlie Strong with Jim Collins and me, Mike Waddell, here on the Fifth Quarter on the North Carolina Sports Network. Coach Strong, one of the legendary coaches that you worked with at a few stops is Lou Holtz. How would Lou Holtz operate in the NIL era of college football?
Well, he would have to adjust because coach is all about building a team, and his whole thing is that players get scholarships. So what more do you have to give them? But if he was in his era right now, he would have to adjust, and all coaches would have to because of the way, but only because of the way it's heading, and you know that you can't just sit back and feel like that. I'm not going to go in the portal. I mean, I'm not going to go chase guys in the portal. And people always say, the players are in the portal, they're there for a reason. not all of them are, but a good majority of them are there because you just taking someone else's problems. But I always felt like this: if you're a good football player, you're going to stay where you are, and you just going to develop, and you're going to continue to stay where you are. But I think with Coach right now, if he was still coaching at this time, he would have to make some changes for himself.
Charlie, tell everybody this from being with Coach Saban. Tell me about the organization of and the evaluation of high school talent, number one, and then the possible people in the transfer portal. What that organization was all about at the University of Alabama.
See, Jim, the thing that Coach Saban did was he himself was a major part of recruiting, and he would watch you. Just say this, like, and you recruited your position, so you felt like, okay, I got a linebacker here, and somebody, the recruiting. You have people within the office that are recruiting people who have find this linebacker for you. They bring you the linebacker. You watch the tape of this linebacker. Now that tape, he's got to go to Coach Saban's going to look at, the recruiting coordinator is going to look at it, the position coach. All those people got to sign off on that player before you end up taking him. But Coach is going to look at that tape just like you. He's going to write up an evaluation. And what we did is that we talked about recruiting every day. And he called recruits every night. He was going to call somebody. So he was on top of his game with the recruiting because he just knew that was the bloodline of a program. And you have to be on your game in recruiting because you can't sit there because people are going to out recruit you if you don't, because everybody's always looking for an angle in recruiting. And so the same thing with the transfer portal. You got to be able to find guys in that portal that that fit your program, Jim. They got to be able to fit your program. Because you just can't go and just take anybody. And that guy has got to be where he's coming from. You got to research where he's coming from because was he a contributor where he's coming from? Did he cause any issues where he's coming from? Will he be a good teammate? Will he be good for your program? All those questions got to be answered before you bring him because your culture is probably different than the culture he's coming from. So if he can't match your culture, then you got a problem, and he's going to have a problem coming into your culture.
That's that C word, Mike, that we've talked about all fall.
Yeah, culture is indeed the case, and I got to ask you both, is that what went wrong at Florida State in 2024? Because you go from being right at the precipice of a national championship before their quarterback gets injured in 2023 to going literally to the outhouse, the first ever 17th place finish. It really does me great pride to say that Florida State finished 17th, dead last in the ACC. I'm not a Florida State fan, but is that what went wrong? Did Mike Norvell get drunk on the success and say, I can just take anybody, I'm that good? Is that what coaches have to look forward to in the portal era?
But Mike, I think that what happened is like the year before with Florida State, and the quarterback was key for them, and he was a guy for them. And when he went down, look how they struggled the last part of that season. When he went down,
bolted, Charlie. They all bolted on him.
They all bolted. And then, Jim, you look at on defense what he had. He had two players right now starting at the Chargers versus the other defensive lineman.
Yeah,
but they had a lot of good players in that program. And so now when you now all of a sudden all those guys are seniors or whatever they're going, now you bring in guys and they got to fit your culture. Because if they don't fit your culture, then you're going to have issues and you ain't going to win games. And it's hard to bring in, and I just keep thinking it's hard to bring in a lot of guys that really don't know you and know what you're all about. And now you asking them to change who they are in the limited time that they have to change.
Jimmy mentioned the word culture that we've talked about. We call it the C word. I'll talk about the F word we did in our earlier segment called family. That is something that is thrown around a lot. I can tell you as an administrator, I used to laugh at that, especially towards the end of my career in the SEC and the Big Ten as an administrator, because There's no such thing as family in my viewpoint. That's as an administrator. You guys are coaches. What does the word family mean to you? Not what it did mean when you played and you coached over the last 4 decades, but what does family in college athletics mean, if anything, in 2025?
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I made the statement earlier, Charlie, that that family this day and time is it's more like associates this day and time. The I word is so prevalent in today's college sports. I watched a young man that just committed to a school in the state of North Carolina. And he's in front of the entire basketball audience, and all he can talk about is what the program can do for me, how they're going to build this program around me. So the me word is extremely prevalent at the top. So I think the family word is overrated. Coach Saban said this earlier in the year, and I've used this 2 or 3 times on this show, Charlie and Mike. Coach Saban was on game day, and he said his statement was this: be careful who you're taking in the transfer portal, because you may be taking somebody else's shit. And those were his exact words.
He's taking somebody else's problem. But Jim, it used to be a time when 20 years ago, family was critical.
Sure.
Because that's how you built your team. You built your team where guys respected one another, guys played for one another. But now, just because of the way things are, it's all about me. It's all about I. And that's why I said Coach Holtz would really struggle right now, because that's not what he's about. It's all about, look at me. Look what I've done. Look what I can do. This is what y'all going to pay me, because this is what I deserve. This is what I built. And it's all about me, but it's never about us. It's never about us building a championship together. And I will say this, like you look at this past season at that Michigan team, look how long those guys were together. Some of those guys were 6 years almost.
Oh yeah.
So look what they built, what they built over the years, and they knew one another. Like they played for one another. They had that feeling for one another, and it's going to be interesting to watch as this thing continue to move. How teams are going to be teams. Are they teams? Or are they a bunch of individuals that play at the right moment?
I think the right staff and the right coach can still build the family if they select the people that fit the culture that they're trying to build. If they select the wrong people, and I was not in Tallahassee, so I don't know, but it appears that they selected some of the wrong people to be in that program. So it's still about the selection process as you recruit these players. It's one thing to go out, and Charlie, I use this word a lot. I said, you can go out and recruit really good players, but you can also recruit turds. And when what happens when you do that is they poison the locker room. You win games with what happens on the practice field and in the locker room, and you win with good players and you win with good people.
Well, Jim, if a guy is a really good player, why would I leave and go somewhere else if I didn't want to sit and go build with the players I'm with? Because you're a good player already. So why do you need to run away? Just stand there and because there's nothing that's making you and forcing you to run. You have nowhere, and plus the place you run into, what makes you think you're gonna go there and change them? If you couldn't change me, what's gonna make you? And like you said, it's all about be getting paid more money. But still, though, if we want to build it, and like you said, if you're gonna really build it, you got to have a strong enough staff and a strong enough players. You got to have a core group of players who is going to be, hey, we're all in. This is our program. This is what we want to do. This is how we're going to go win.
The Lawson Insurance Group in Raleigh is a family-owned business led by 3 actual brothers who happen to be huge sports fans. Ken Lawson, Miller Lawson, and Michael Lawson. I know these guys, I trust these guys, and I send these guys my own insurance business and that of my family. The next time you have insurance needs, I hope you'll do the same. The Lawson Insurance Group is known for its commitment to community and its dedication to ensuring that North Carolinians and their businesses are prepared for life's inevitable challenges, with the reminder that as a high street insurance partner, Lawson Insurance Group offers local expertise and support that, combined with High Street's extensive national resources, means more choice and support for you as their client. To learn more, search Lawson Insurance Group online. The Lawson Insurance website will be the first link that pops up. I am a better person and a more effective business owner for having known and learned from Emily Parks over many years now. Emily's company, Organize for Success, helps multi-passionate business owners and executives bring harmony to all the layers of their lives, from work to side projects, from friends and family to hobbies, community, and beyond. With Emily's help, you too can make every minute matter. She helps you determine what earns your time and how to efficiently accomplish what matters. One of the many things I love about Emily is that she does not impose her will on her clients. She listens to them. That way she can better help them cultivate the lives they want to live. You can set up a complimentary call with Emily today by visiting organizeforsuccess.com.
It would seem to me that the habits that these modern college football players are learning and bouncing from program to program is eventually going to catch up to them when they get to the pros, because you get drafted, you're the property of that team. You don't have the opportunity to transfer out, and eventually you're going to have to deal with the hard way. And it would maybe be, sounds like the type of coach that you guys are describing that can still build that family type structure in modern college football is Dabo Swinney. And it's right now it's one Dabo against 11 other type coaches in the college football playoff. Does that culture that he has been so ridiculed for, protecting at all costs the family of Clemson football, is that really the program that people may indeed say, wow, we really wish we could have that?
Well, I think what Dabo has done is amazing, because he have kept his players, and then they have built it together. And a lot of people want to be a part of that, right? There's a lot of student athletes want to be a part of something that's special that is happening there at Clemson. And that's why he'll be able to continue building it, because what Jim is saying, you got to be able to select your players. He is selecting the right guys that he knows that can fit his culture, that can fit what he's looking for. And not, it's not so much that, we're looking at just football, but all athletes are like that in any sport now. Because of the NIL now, you can have all coaches now with every sport is struggling trying to deal with the athletes on their team. Because you can look at teams now, even with the females, and you can see a whole new team. And you're like, where did that team come from? Where'd all these transfers come from? But it's not just it's what we're dealing with right now in society, and it's all about, it's getting pushed because of agents. It's been pushed because people are looking at it, what's in it for me? And that's what it's all about now.
Charlie Strong with us here on the fifth quarter on the North Carolina Sports Network. Jim Collins, myself, Mike Waddell. Coach, before we let you go, I need to ask you this question. You've been the head coach in the Big East, in the American, and also at the University of Texas. And I can't imagine the pressure that comes with being the head coach at a place like the University of Texas. Give us a window into what it was like the day you got that job, the day that you would consider to be the pinnacle of your time as the head coach of the Longhorns, and what it felt like. I know there was disappointment. Was there any stress relief and saying, thank God this is over when it ended?
Well, you know what it was, Mike, is that it's the preparation, and I felt like I was prepared for the job. and when you don't have success, you put that much pressure on yourself because you just get so upset at yourself for not going in and being successful, because nobody likes to be fired in any job they have, but you want to be able to have the resources that Texas provide. You got to sit and say, hey, you question yourself as why didn't we get it done? Why didn't that happen? And sometimes it just doesn't happen. But it doesn't mean that you're not a good coach, and that doesn't mean that you just, hey, that's the one job that really defines who you are. And you just got to pick up the pieces and knowing that, hey, that program, it's, at that time, the only championship which they still is like that is the one when Coach Brown won it. And so you go in there figuring, hey, my job is to come in here and win a national championship. And then when it doesn't happen, then you get more upset at yourself and you beat yourself up more than, like, why didn't it happen? Why didn't you get it done? Like, you question yourself. And that's what I would say. Anyway, that's what you can't do, but you can't help it because you are a competitor, and that's what you're going to do.
Who's your pick in the CFP coming up? It starts this Saturday. Finally, this expansive 12-team college football playoff is about to make its debut. Who's going to bring home the title in January? We'll go with you, Coach Strong, and then Jimmy will give you the last word.
You know what? I like Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is balanced. They play really good defense. They can run the football. They can throw the ball. They got a quarterback who can make the plays. And where they sit, I just think that they have a chance. I think Notre Dame has a chance to go win them one, which they haven't won since Coach Holtz.
Yep.
You know what? That's an interesting pick, Charlie. I didn't think you would go there. My choice at this point in time, it may surprise you a little bit, but I think the Tennessee Vols may have a run at this, and they play obviously they play at Ohio State, and then they draw the Oregon Ducks, and the Oregon Ducks have lived on the edge for a lot of this year. So I think the Tennessee Vols may be in the hunt.
There we go.
I'm going to go with whoever has the best defense. I'm a defensive guy. I'm on here with two defensive geniuses.
Yep.
Whoever has the best defense would be my pick.
That's a good call, Mike.
Well, you're going with Georgia then. They got the best defense, probably.
Yeah, I just hope they have a quarterback left over. One last question. I'm going to go back on my word. I do have one final question on you. It's percolating in the back of my head. Going back to what you were saying about coaches right now and what they have to do to build family and build a program, and then even the farm system type of comments that we were making earlier about programs. If you were a group of 5 head coach right now in the Sun Belt or in the Mountain West or in one of these leagues that might be considered lesser than Conference USA, the American, is that a death sentence type job, knowing that your players are going to be recycling out year after year?
Well, but if you look at Mike, a lot of these guys that have got some of the jobs have come from the FBS, FCS, and so what I would do, I would load up my roster and just go win and win as many games as I possibly can, and see what happens, because that those players, and you just tell them, hey, give me 1 year, 2 years, however long. If it's 1 year, you're out of here in one, and I know I got to go replace them. But and that's what's tough, because is there enough players that can go around where you can be consistent in building that team every year? Because the guys from the P4s, they ain't going to want to come to you because they're trying to go somewhere else to another P4. And then do you have enough good players where you can push them to a P4, but I got to get something back in return?
Let me ask you this, Charlie and Mike. And I've had this discussion with people, do you as a FCS or a group of or a non-group of four, a group of five, or whatever it's called now. We changed terms so many times. Do you make an agreement that you're going to become a farm team for, especially if you're an FCS team? Do you make an agreement with one or two teams that feed you players that they cannot take? Because we're getting to a scholarship limit now, whether it's going to be 105, and they ship them to you. And you prep them, you run their offense, you run their defense, and then the ones that can make it, they end up moving back to what the big team. Is there any any opportunity there for that?
You know what I think is hard with that, Jim, is that that coach who's the head coach, how long is he gonna be there?
Yeah.
True.
So all of a sudden you're building a team for a P4 coach, and then the way it is now, no one to have patience with anyone.
Yeah, you're right.
So now all of a sudden I'm building you're at a P4 and I'm building a program for you. And then in 2 years you're gone, or 3 years you're gone. Now what? Now what do I do? Because I done really sold out to you. So then the next coach to come in, I got to have a meeting with him. Say, hey, listen, this is what we had going on. And are you want to talk about it?
Coach Strong, I have to ask you, what are you up to these days? And are you looking to get back on the sideline? What is Charlie Strong up to as we get ready to enter 2025?
I don't know. The right opportunity come, I can get back on the sideline. My wife, she wants me out of the house, so I just been doing a few games with ESPN. I really did a lot of games in the MAC, which I really enjoyed because I just thought that was really good football. Not telling Jim, I thought it was really good football there. The coaches did an outstanding job in that conference, and the players played hard. And I know that. A few of them were able to get opportunities somewhere else, but it was fun, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, we have enjoyed having you on the fifth quarter. Look forward to maybe having you back on in the future as we enter what is soon to be our third season here on the North Carolina Sports Network with the innumerable Jim Collins, right?
Yes.
Our featured coach every week for Carolina Sports Network. Charlie Strong, thanks a lot for joining us on this edition of the fifth quarter.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me on. Ain't no challenge for champions and chain no fear. Yep, the champ is here.